Welcome to my kitchen. Okay, today we're making another dessert. This is called a flan cocho in Puerto Rico. In Mexico, we call it pastel imposible. In English, I think we're just gonna call it a flan cake, and that's because it's a combination of flan and cake all in one, but it's two separate layers, so you get both distinct flavors. It's really, really delicious. You can make it chocolate and vanilla. Today I'm going to make eggnog and vanilla. That's gonna be an eggnog flan and a vanilla cake, so I hope you like it. Okay, now we're gonna talk about the ingredients for the flan. Making a flan is really easy. You'll need a blender. You'll toss all of the ingredients in the blender, whip them, and that's it. I'm not kidding. Let's take a look at those ingredients. Okay, so we're gonna start with one 8-ounce package at room temperature of low-fat cream cheese. We have 1 can of evaporated milk. This is the low-fat version. We have 1 can of sweetened condensed milk. We have 3 whole eggs. Sorry, one of those cracked. I usually use 5 for the flan recipe, but because I'm using eggnog, and there's a lot of egg in eggnog, obviously, I'm only going to be using 3 eggs for today's recipe. All right, so there you have it. You toss all of the ingredients in the blender, you whip them, and that's it. You're done. Okay, so here are the ingredients for the flan. You just put them all in there, and then you just whip it, and that's it. So let's give it a go. Let's turn this blender on. We'll start it low, and then we'll crank it up. Okay guys, let's talk about now making the cake batter. So I started off by sifting my dry ingredients. I sifted them or mixed them together. Then I poured my vanilla into my milk, which is always yummy, right? And then what I will do is I will start mixing the sugar and the canola oil. Then I'll add the 3 eggs in one at a time. And then what I'll do finally is I will alternate my dry ingredients with my milk, probably in about 3 portions. And please remember, you don't want to overmix because that'll give you a hard dense cake. And that's not what we want this time. Sometimes you want that, but not this time. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Okay guys, now we are going to move on to the ingredients for the cake. So we've got 1 cup of all-purpose flour, 1 small package of instant vanilla pudding, whatever brand you want to use. This is more dry ingredients. This is half a teaspoon of salt, half a teaspoon of baking powder, and 1 teaspoon of baking soda. This is 2% fat-free milk, or you can use whole milk. I just didn't have any whole milk, but this is half a cup. Then I have half a cup of canola oil. I have 1 teaspoon of vanilla, 3 eggs, whole eggs at room temperature, and 1 cup of sugar, and that will be for my cake. Okay, so take a look. So this is the sugar, the canola oil, and the eggs. Then I will be alternating my dry ingredients and my milk and vanilla in about 3 portions. And please remember, do not overmix. That would be bad. Okay, I'll be back. Making a flan or flan cake, you start the recipe by making a caramel. Now this isn't like American caramel. American caramel is a little bit like dulce de leche, which we all love, right? This caramel is just basically sugar put on the stove and melted. Once it's melted, you transfer it onto your baking dish, and then you do your best to swirl it around so that you try to coat the outer edges as much as possible, so that once you invert your flan cake, all of that drips down the side, and it's ooey, yummy, and delicious. All right, I'm not going to take you through the whole melting process because it's boring and you don't need to see that. You just need to see the finished product. So let me show you what it looks like once it's melted and transferred onto the baking dish. Okay, so here it is. This is the caramel. I poured it into my baking dish, and you can see that there's a little bit of broken off there. And I did the best I could to swirl it around, but it cools very quickly and it's hard to manage. But that's okay. That's, you know, you do what you can. I also added a little bit of non-stick cooking spray to the pan so that my flan cake slips out as easy as possible. Okay, now we're going to pour our ingredients into the baking pan. Okay, so now that we're ready to bake it, I've started off by putting the flan mix in to the baking dish first. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to pour the cake batter into this. The cake batter will fall to the bottom, but as it bakes, it will rise to the top. So let me go ahead and pour the cake batter in now. There it is, you guys. Okay, I know it looks a little funkaroo, but don't worry about it. It's gonna be just fine. Now what I will do is I will cover this and I will bake it at 350 in a preheated oven in a style called bain-marie. And that's basically when you bake something in water. And I'll show you that. There it is. It is now in the oven. I've got my pan inside of another pan, and you can see the water is starting to evaporate already. I used some preheated water just so that it would take less time to heat up. But that's it, in the oven for an hour at 350. Then I'll pop it out. I'll test it, and if it's ready, we'll take it out. And if not, we'll leave it in for about maybe 3 or 4 more minutes. Okay, I'll see you in a bit. I need you to know that my cake did not bake in the usual hour that it takes. Usually it's an hour at 350. This time, for whatever reason, I don't know if maybe my cake batter was slightly different just because I tried a new recipe, but it took about an hour and 25, an hour and 30 minutes to bake. Not a big deal, perfectly fine. I'm sure it's gonna be wonderful. Let it sit on the counter while it cools. Once it's cooled down for about maybe an hour and a half, go ahead and invert it, because if you let it sit too long, some of that caramel will get hard. And it won't be hard to get off, but you just won't get as much of that caramel because it'll thicken up and sit mostly in your pan as opposed to on your cake, which is where you want it. Okay, so let's take a peek. Here we go. Now you can see the cake. That's the cake right there at the bottom, and this is going to be the flan part. All of this golden color that you see, that's that sugar that we melted, and there it is at the bottom of the pan as well. It's not super beautiful to look at. Most of them typically turn out this way, but it is so good. It is so creamy. And this one, because I used a little bit less cake batter than I normally did, I usually use like a 2-cup recipe cake. I only used a 1-cup recipe cake, so there's not a lot of cake there, but there is going to be cake, and you can see it there at the bottom. All right, so with that, we're going to give it a cut, and I'll show you what it looks like when we actually cut it.